This guy was a die-hard gamer, and since he spent a lot of his time in a hospital bed, he played games all day long. Despite his best efforts, the boy lost the game and blamed the dumb AI of the game for healing the wrong target. Our hero was getting tired of his endless daily routine. One day, gaming lost all of its magic, as all new games, regardless of their genre, were utter garbage. Just like Isekai stories, games became repetitive and similar to each other, with poor gameplay and an overexploited story. And just as the boy was about to give up on searching for a new game, he suddenly found a new one that immediately caught his attention. The game was titled Dungeons & Stones and was a 2D pixelated indie game, which was rare according to the boy. The hero was annoyed that the only language was English and wasn't really attracted to the game. But since it was free, our cheapskate decided to give it a try anyway. The game offered many classes for the player to choose from, but since he was going to grind the game, the gamer chose the barbarian class at random. Our guy hadn't played this type of game in a long time, but he quickly caught on to the purpose of each quest, and before the gamer could even realize it, he had spent the entire day on Dungeon & Stone, which led to the birth of a new obsession. It was as if the protagonist fell in love with the game. Dungeon & Stone had many features that were cool and annoying at the same time, like the fact that one needed to team up with an NPC. Also, if you die in this game, you have to restart it from the beginning. This game that was fun at first quickly stimulated his die-hard gaming side. After being silenced by the nurse, the boy apologized before jumping right back into the game that he was now determined to beat. After a quick search, our hero was disappointed to see that there was no tutorial or gameplay footage of Dungeons & Stone, and thus he decided to conquer it on his own. And so, he kept on playing the game while still in the hospital. He kept on playing the game during his entire forced public service. He kept on playing the game while in college and even after graduating and getting a job at the company. Afterwards, the protagonist would then spend his entire time outside of work grinding the game. Yet no matter how many times he would try, and no matter the character, the hero would always get demolished by the game, and after 9 years of almost undisturbed screen time, the great day had finally arrived. Our hero was finally in front of the domain of the final boss. Our guy was finally about to enter the final level. He was now overjoyed as he was certain that no one had arrived this far in this 2D pixelated free-to-play indie game. In fact, our hero was left quite relieved, as it meant that the sacrifice of his 20s over a game wouldn't be in vain. He didn't think twice before tapping yes on the confirmation message of the boss room. The game then warned the protagonist that he wouldn't be able to change his mind before asking him again. The protagonist found this message to be rather suspiciously ominous, but the excitement took over his brain as he was now too deep to back down. The hero was fully prepared to lose to the boss on his first try and began to wonder about its patterns and abilities. At some point, he began to dream that he would take it down on his first try. But little did he know, his entrance to the abyss marked the end of the tutorial. This greatly shocked the one who had sacrificed a decade of his life for this game. The protagonist almost broke his screen upon realizing that the message was in his home tongue despite the game supposedly being in English. Our guy was filled with anger, as he had spent countless hours learning English for the sake of Dungeon & Stone. Suddenly, the screen began to shine with a bright light once the user check was complete. A raging agony poured into the body of the protagonist as the teleportation began, and just like that, the one who was no more fell unconscious. Later on, our hero was annoyed by the loud voice praising the young warriors for finally getting out of this sacred place. But upon opening his eyes, the protagonist was shocked by the nonsense he had suddenly spawned in. Torches illuminated the place instead of light bulbs. The hero was surrounded by muscular, half-naked barbarians. There was also an old loud man who asked them to select their weapon. The hero tried his best to remain calm, even after realizing that he had just understood a language he had never heard before. Our gamer realized that he first needed to analyze the situation, starting with his geeky body, only to be surprised. His Twinkie self had gained huge tattooed muscles and firm manly hands. This made him realize that he wasn't the same. However, the elderly man asked those he called to come forward while he was deep in contemplation. The first barbarian was called forward. The barbarian took a moment to look around before finally choosing his weapon. The old man commended the blonde guy for selecting the double-edged axe. He then declared him an official warrior before calling the second name. At that moment, the hero realized that he had seen this kind of ritual before. He was quite familiar with people like the muscle mommy choosing the sword, and the ugly caveman selecting the sword and becoming warriors. And upon hearing the old man wish the blessing of Rafdonia over the warriors, the suspicions of the protagonist were truly confirmed. There was now no more doubt in the mind of the gamer, as he was now in his favorite game. He had chosen Barbarian as his class, and now he was stuck inside the character he was playing. This was so shocking that the now Barbarian was unable to wrap his head around it. Suddenly, he noticed that the trembling redhead next to him had also realized that he was inside the game. Seeing how scared he was, our hero quickly realized that this guy wasn't the normal barbarian. At first, he was relieved to see that he wasn't the only gamer here, but the ominous and sudden voice filled him with fear. The giant old man had spawned out of nowhere in front of the hero. The old barbarian demanded to know who had spoken, but the protagonist firmly denied being the one, like the good boy that he was. He was almost discovered because of the dumb earthling next to him. With that, the old man turned his attention towards the scaredy cat and realized that he was the loudmouth. And before the redhead could even ask for a simple explanation, his head got chopped off. The other earthling was horrified by this and almost peed his pants, or in that case, mini skirt. Even so, he tried his best to remain calm. The protagonist understood that keeping his calm was equivalent to keeping his head. In the end, the old man claimed that the redhead was inhabited by an evil spirit and urged the rest of the young barbarians not to even mourn him. And so, as the coming-of-age ceremony resumed, the half-naked hero had finished analyzing the situation. First, otherworlders like him were labeled as evil spirits. Secondly, these evil spirits were slain as soon as discovered. And thirdly, our evil spirit had luckily escaped death and was almost decapitated. In other words, the gamer needed to perfectly pass for a barbarian. Yet only one small issue remained. As the huge guys and muscle mommies were called one by one, the hero realized that he didn't know his name. He began to low-key panic and prayed for a panel window to appear like in the rest of the boring Isekai stories. Seeing this, our boy decided to take a huge risk. He decided to wait 2 seconds after a name goes unanswered before claiming it, and decided to gamble on the fact that there was no other Isekai protagonist here who got the same idea. At that moment, the name of Bjorn, son of Jandil, was called. After counting no seconds, no one made a move. None of the shredded barbarians responded to this cool name, and thus our hero decided to step forward. Our hero decided to risk his life by assuming that the name of Bjorn was truly his. Bjorn, son of Jandil, was called in a second time, and so our protagonist stepped forward. He tried his best to remain calm in front of the big old man with a braided beard, and upon hearing the old man asking him to select his weapon, he was left relieved, as he had claimed the right name. From now on, our favorite fraud would go by Bjorn, son of Jandil. And so now came the time to fulfill the next most important task for the sake of gameplay. The barbarian race that was deprived of magic powers possessed monstrous physical abilities, which is why our hero originally planned on specializing his character in close combat. Thus, the choice of weapon was obvious. The old man was intrigued by what Bjorn had picked. Our hero decided to arm himself with protection, which was something that a gamer like him would have never used back in the real world. According to the protagonist, who just became a warrior, his weapon of choice was the most adequate one. With that, the synchronization was finally complete as inscriptions appeared on screen. The data of the new character was finalized and sent to the administrator. And just like that, the character known as Born Jandil was born. During his first games as a barbarian, our hero would try to wield 2 giant swords, as it made him look sick. Yet unlike in real life, he would get smashed and demolished countless times. Seeing this, the player began to search for a way to improve his character. Yet no matter the heavy weapon that he would select, the barbarian would always succumb to the damage. Until one day, an idea changed everything. Due to their strength, barbarians could theoretically work as tanks instead of dealers despite not being as durable as dwarves. At first, the gamer wanted to avoid this method, as it required a lot of training, but decided to proceed anyways for the sake of research. And so, he decided to proceed with the test, and to his shock, it was a success. Upon seeing how efficient the shield was in the hands of a barbarian, the gamer loved this heavenly match, which is why he ended up selecting it in the ceremony. And so, as he began to think that his decision was wise, the gates were opened. The outside was finally visible. Bjorn knew that once declared warriors, young barbarians would have to enter the labyrinth. Thus, he knew that their destination was the city where it was located. The barbarians needed to go to Rafdonia. Thus, the old man ordered them to go there in order to meet their destiny. And just like that, the freshly graduated promotion of meatheads charged to meet their fate. The protagonist decided to follow the other barbarians as he didn't know where said fate was. In fact, he wasn't sure that either of them did. Later that night, and to absolutely no one's shock, the gym rats in mini-skirts got lost on the way. And so, as the rest of the cattle began to blame the leader for failing to get them to their destination, they were all equally stupid for following him in Bjorn's eyes. With that, the young man had no choice but to relinquish his leader title. And with his fall, a muscle, mommy known as Anar, the second daughter of Fenline, stepped up as the new guide to the labyrinth. At first, our hero had high hopes for this warrior. Yet, and to no one's shock, the blonde got lost as well. The herd began to scream at her as they needed to reach the labyrinth in time. Einar had failed to lead her comrades as they began to discuss who to elect as their next leader. It didn't take Bjorn long to realize that he was surrounded by idiots who would never reach the labyrinth on their own, and yet he didn't want to stand out. So he decided to adopt a different approach. At first, Einar thought that Bjorn was here to shame her. But the protagonist was here to secretly tell her how to reach the labyrinth. The girl was left shocked. Bjorn advised her to follow the adventurers' party passing nearby. Those same adventurers looked at the armed barbarians with disgust, while thinking that they would never reach their destination like that. Einar found this to be a brilliant idea. She rushed to announce it to the group, making them praise her once again, which made Bjorn question the stupidity of his half-naked race. With that, the herd proceeded with the plan. All were overjoyed to have found the entrance of the glorious labyrinth, all except one. Bjorn wondered if stepping into the portal was the right choice. He was certain that if he left the group right now, none of the fired-up muscle heads would notice him. After all, Bjorn was a gamer who spent most of his life hospitalized and had never gotten himself into a fist fight. Our hero began to doubt his ability to conquer the labyrinth, and began to wonder if there was any other way to pay his taxes, which he had just remembered existed. This game had its own version of the IRS and would force all citizens to pay taxes or else face death. It also offers two main ways for one to make a living, with the first being monster hunting. Yet the second was the most frightening for a gamer, as it implied getting a job. For that reason, our hero's disgusting class was a problematic factor. Barbarians were considered a brutal minority, which is why jobs weren't an option and were forced to hunt monsters to pay their taxes. Another issue was that the labyrinth opens monthly. Failing to enter the labyrinth in time, the protagonist would have to survive this game jobless with the rations given to him for an entire month. For that reason, Bjorn realized that stepping into the portal was a must. Yet fear had paralyzed his body and forbidden him from taking a step forward towards survival. Only then was a hand laid on the shoulder of the gamer, which turned out to be the blonde skull crusher. Einar explained to Bjorn that they needed to enter the labyrinth before it closed. The portal got smaller as 5 minutes were left until it closed. Thus, he asked the girl to go first. But before stepping into the portal, Einar thanked Bjorn for his help today. The gamer didn't expect to receive gratitude. The fetish then asked Bjorn how she could attain his level of wisdom, as he was the smartest barbarian she had ever met. The gamer wanted to tell her that she needs to get inhabited by an evil spirit, but he decided to give the safe and boring answer by advising the girl to think before acting. Einar then promised to repay Bjorn back for his help if she manages to survive the labyrinth. This greatly shocked our hero, as barbarians were supposed to be a fearless race. Thus, he asked her if she was scared of losing her life. The skull crusher was surprised to hear this and explained that fear was normal. Einar explained that despite her fear, she was now a warrior whose only way to survive was to fight, which he should understand, as they were in the same boat. This made the gamer realize that he and the rest of his race share the same fate. Bjorn realized that barbarians were truly an amazing race, as they were taught how to overcome their fears in order to survive and pay their taxes. With that, the hero reminded himself that he was a barbarian as well. As 60 seconds remained until the gate closed, he charged forward despite his fear. The gamer was certain that his muscular body combined with his nerdy knowledge of the game would allow him to survive this doom. With that, Bjorn entered the level 1 crystal cave, and despite analyzing his whereabouts, the one who wasted 9 years of his life was unable to figure out his own location. It was safe to say that the die-hard gamer knows a lot about the game. This led him to a solid conclusion. The combination between the barbarian body he was now inside without consent and his geeky mind would allow him to overcome this place, yet at least, that was the original plan. Bjorn had spawned in complete darkness. Then he began to wonder where the muscle mommy and the rest of his cavemen landed. Based on his surroundings, the player immediately deduced that he had appeared in the level 1 labyrinth, where crystals should act like torches. Yet seeing how the place was pitch black, Bjorn understood that he was in the rare darkness region of the labyrinth. In the original game, he shouldn't have spawned in this region, yet now in an Isekai, our hero had to expect anything. With that, Bjorn decided to check his status window, but despite his best efforts and no matter the name he called in, nothing would pop out, just like he had expected. With that, our nerdy barbarian, who was deprived of the boring Isekai basics, began to progress within the dungeon. Bjorn thought that he was advancing too slowly and began to wonder if getting down on all four in order to crawl would be faster. When suddenly, something spiked up his butt. Our hero began to scream in pain as his leg was caught inside a goblin trap. It didn't take the system long to state the obvious. Despite the pain, Bjorn tried his best to remain calm, as a single scream could lead to his demise. Goblins were the only monsters on level 1 that hunt using traps, and the green creature that laid this one shouldn't be too far. Bjorn began to quietly analyze his surroundings. Yet after meeting a void similar to his past life, he began to think that the goblin must have left the scene. At first, Bjorn was relieved, yet then again, positivity in a hazardous dark place was the deadliest mindset. He needed to be wary of the goblin creeping nearby and needed to keep quiet. The monster would then spot the trapped barbarian. The League of Legends player would then wait for the protagonist to succumb to exhaustion. For that reason, our hero needed to stay silent and come up with a plan to survive. Seeing how there was a neurotoxin inside the trap, Barbarians should have gotten themselves leather boots instead of sandals, according to Bjorn. Yet our guy realized that now wasn't the time to think about such things and quickly figured a way out of this mess. The poison's effect was starting to kick in, and the protagonist lost the feeling in his injured leg. Bjorn's fear was also numbed by the poison, and so he began to dare the goblin to show itself. He then began to scream at the monster to reveal itself as it wasn't coming out. Bjorn began to imagine that there was no actual goblin here, which means that he was now screaming like an idiot for nothing. And yet, our protagonist was determined to survive. With that, he began insulting the goblin's mama and the goblin's papa, followed by the entire family tree, as he kept on losing blood. When suddenly, Bjorn noticed motion behind him. The creature that was surprisingly sensible about its family must be trying to get closer to Bjorn, who was walking away. The fact that the goblin was too far to be seen was rather problematic, so Bjorn decided to walk away faster. With that, the gamer began to march forward, but so did the goblin. And as soon as the hero turned around, the creature stopped. This creature began to frighten Bjorn by its smart hunting method. It was filled with joy as its prey was slowly bleeding out. Bjorn decided to change his plan by collapsing to the ground, as this league player was rather clever. He was now pretending to have succumbed to his injuries. The goblin could now approach its prey in order to chop it off. Yet the little booger felt that something was off, and thus a rock was thrown at the head of the man in a mini skirt. The mere fact that it was smart enough to double check if its target was dead before approaching it made it much smarter than a barbarian. Only then did it come to him, but just as the predator was about to make its move, it realized that this was a trap. Now came the time to counterattack. But Bjorn missed his punch as his arm was too short. Our hero began to panic as, just like she said, it was simply not long enough. When suddenly, something interesting began to happen. Our hero was getting overtaken by a mysterious primal instinct. He was so aware of the goblin's movements that he easily grabbed it. Our hero had gained in power. That's right, upon crawling inside another man's body, the fragile gamer had become a powerful barbarian. With that, Bjorn began to pound the goblin. He kept on fisting and fisting into its guts, to the point where the creature couldn't take it any longer. Bjorn then decided to give the finishing blow. And just like that, what you see on screen is splattered everywhere. With that, Bjorn killed his first monster in the game. The corpse then began to evaporate into thin air. This feature that made this world seem more like a game was rather shocking. In the end, something was left behind by the monster, a little red stone that could be labeled as a currency inside the game. According to the knowledge of the geek, this grade 9 crystal amounts to a single loaf of bread. It was rather funny to see Bjorn almost lose his life for a piece of bread. Even so, he kept on moving. This world was filled with labyrinths that were characterized by countless monsters that dropped loot when slain. It also had cities where many minorities lived together in peace. In other words, Bjorn was now truly living in the world of the game. Even so, the gamer who kept on advancing could never confuse his home world with this fabricated realm. But according to the system, the barbarian was still bleeding. He knew that his leg wasn't completely unusable, but crawling on 3 limbs in order to avoid using the injured leg gave the protagonist a sense of comfort. This shameless way of moving allowed the protagonist to locate all traps, and despite the fact that pain was entering other body parts, he decided to endure until the end. The system was getting annoying, as it constantly reminded Bjorn of his continuous blood loss. His plan was to keep on moving in one direction in order to exit the darkness. The gamer then began to wonder about the fate of the other Earthling, and if he returned to Earth or truly died upon being beheaded. At that moment, Bjorn was able to understand why humans relish their religions so much, as the system bombarded him with bleeding notifications. Now on the brink of bleeding out, he realized that prayers distract them from their inevitable doom. A light then appeared at the end of the tunnel, which greatly relieved the protagonist. Bjorn then decided to do his best in order to exit the darkness. Yet just as he started showing some positivity and hope for people on the other side to give him some help, someone just as ugly as him began to mock his mentality. The other Bjorn told the crawling one that people had no reason to help a dumb, smelly barbarian like him, as he was neither a smart guy nor a baddie. The protagonist began to think that he was losing his mind, as he started to talk with the hallucination. The pain and the blood loss were splitting his mind in two. And so, as Bjorn tried his best to keep on advancing, his other half wanted him to give up and die in peace. At that moment, he reached the light. He began to look for anyone to help him, when suddenly he spotted a bunch of adventurers. These adventurers spotted him too. His health was getting lower and lower. Upon dropping to 2%, the system awarded our hero exactly 1 mental stat point for enduring so much. The knight approached the half-naked man and quickly realized that he was still a noob, while Bjorn was about to die of pain. The knight found it rather suspicious that a level 1 simpleton arrived at this place before them, while our hero struggled to even beg for help. He was dying, and yet the party kept on staring at him like some sort of injured animal. In the end, the proud and mighty knight took pity on our half-naked little baboon. And so he asked Ursina, the priestess in his party, to heal the barbarian. Having recognized the lady as a high-level healer, the hero was left relieved, but to his shock, Ursina refused to heal him. And to make things worse, the knight wasn't upset by her refusal at all. Blondie turned towards his friend, Patsran, and asked him for one of the expensive potions that he keeps for emergencies, and promised to pay him back. Despite being annoyed, the party member handed the potion to the party leader. The knight then warned the barbarian that the potion would hurt, yet Bjorn couldn't care less as long as it saves him from the pearly gates. And so, the red liquid was spilled on our guy's injury. At that moment, the potion began to take effect, but it wasn't pleasant at all. The mighty barbarian started to scream in utter agony. He finally understood why potions weren't allowed in the middle of a fight, as the pain was unbearable. As the potion was fully used, the leg of the protagonist was as good as new. Bjorn tried to catch his breath after suffering what could be described as an internal violation. He was still surprised by the fact that he actually survived. Now with the big guy fully healed, the one who saved his life asked him how he managed to get this far into the dungeon so fast. Bjorn finally understood why the party helped him, as they had hoped that he knew about some sort of secret passage. Thus, he told them what happened to him, while assuming that it would have been weird if they didn't ask for anything in return for their kindness. The knight revealed that he had read about such situations where one would spawn in the darkness, but also explained how it would only happen once every century. Our guy was unable to believe this. There was a powerful party that had a priest and a mage inside this labyrinth, and somehow he, a complete beginner, was the one who ended up spawning in the darkness. With that, the party thanked the young warrior and went on their way. The leader then explained to the barbarian that he should consider this potion as a free gift. Bjorn was shocked. Time spent in the labyrinth was extremely precious, and this party just wasted a lot on him. Bjorn then picked up his shield. The protagonist knew that he should rejoice after being saved, yet the shame of being pitied clouded his joy. Meanwhile, the party went to explore the darkness. On the way, Patsran explained that the barbarian they saved was truly lucky to stumble upon them in his time of need. The archer explained that Dross the knight was the real hero here, as Patsran was too much of a cheapskate to waste his potions. The redhead explained that the streets were filled with dying barbarians, before turning to the priestess and asking her if she shared his opinion. This one didn't answer. The archer tried to argue that Ursina would have helped the dying animal if it weren't for the rules of the temple, yet Patsran was convinced that she was just as bad as him. This made the archer urge the redhead to be more heroic like Dross, yet he tried to argue that the knight only helped him to discover a secret passage. Upon being complimented by a hot girl, Dross felt flattered. He then decided to change the subject by claiming that the barbarian's blood trail goes on forever. The archer began to tease Patsran that the thick thighs they rescued had more determination than luck, yet he refused to change his mind. Dross then pointed his team towards a shortcut. The archer explained to the priestess that he found the man practical, and that he was a genius guide who memorized the details of the first floor, while others would only be able to remember directions. At that moment, something caught Dross's eyes. The 5 adventurers seemed to be the first in the labyrinth to reach their destination. One of them quickly places his hand on the stone, allowing a portal to open. Now the party of 5 was able to access the second floor. But before they could enter the portal, the archer suddenly noticed something. Thus, she quickly halted her party and pointed them to the barbarian's sandal and the trap he got caught in. The mage explained that the girl was right before throwing his light along the trail of blood left behind. Upon seeing how huge and thick it was, boys and girls alike were left shocked. According to the guide, the distance between this place and where they saw the barbarian was a whopping 15 kilometers long. It was rather impressive, as Bjorn traveled this entire distance injured and in complete darkness. Patsran thought the mini-skirt man was insane. The man wasn't sure that he would have crawled such a long distance like he did, and began to think of how Bjorn had something in his hand when they met him. Back then, Bjorn showed the party his crystal. Even as he was near death, he made sure to drag his prize with him. Patsran changed his mind about the protagonist, who even in a critical state, was honest about what little he had to offer, which is why he asked Dross about his name. Patsran didn't see Bjorn as the average NPC any longer, but as a madman whom it would take a lot to kill. Even when faced with horrifying pain, such a mighty barbarian would never surrender to the sweet embrace of death. The one who escaped death by a miracle killed a goblin, followed by 2 others. From there on, Bjorn kept on smashing goblins. At first he was worried, yet being able to see the goblins coming made them easy to deal with. Their traps were placed randomly and were poorly hidden. Their hiding spots of the goblin were just as pitiful, and their surprise attacks were also easy to predict. For this reason, Bjorn was able to easily dominate them. He seemed rather serious when covered in the bodily fluids of the little creatures. Bjorn was now hungry. He rushed to grab the food rations provided to him by the chief of the tribe. But upon seeing the hole in his pouch, he realized that his genius idea to crawl for survival had its downsides. Due to this unexpected twist, Bjorn was now down to 2 days' worth of food, and so he decided to save as much of the rations as possible. He was intrigued by how delicious this low-quality bread was, as it immediately became sweet on his tongue. Our hero now wanted water. The only problem was that there were no sources nearby. This game had a hunger system that gets triggered inside the labyrinth, but normally it only concerns hunger and not thirst. The barbarian wasn't trying to beat a hard game any longer, but trying to survive an even harder world. A world that happens to be a replica of the game he once knew. Since the starter pack didn't include water, it was safe to say that this place must have some kind of source. Suddenly he heard the sound of water and followed it to stumble upon another adventurer. This was the second time Bjorn had encountered people in this dungeon, yet the man didn't speak a word to him, like there was some sort of code that discouraged chats between adventurers. Later that night, our half-naked hero began to count his stones. It was rather amazing to see him collect so much after coming back from near death. Yet, after smashing so many monsters, Bjorn couldn't help but feel a little sleepy. When resting, he could either leave himself to luck and pray that nothing would approach him, or he could make some friends to shield each other. Yet those he asked to be friends with apologized and ran away while claiming that they didn't need any additional members. No matter whom he asked, the answer was the same. No one wanted our stinky barbarian at their party. This was rather annoying. Bjorn didn't want to become a permanent party. He just wanted someone to guard him while sleeping. Only then was he approached by some sassy dude, who invited him to spend the night with him. This quickly annoyed the gamer. The man explained that he was looking for someone to guard him while sleeping and that Bjorn would be perfect for the job. After finally understanding what the man meant, Bjorn explained that he was also looking for an overnight partner. And so, as the man introduced himself as Hans, Bjorn couldn't help but think of how fruity his offer seemed, even with context. Bjorn then introduced himself. Hans immediately grabbed his huge, sweaty hands and explained that it would be hard to invite a third adventurer to their little party. Thus, they needed to make the best use of their intimate time together. Not even the goblins and their traps made the protagonist feel as such. Fearing for his backdoor, Bjorn quickly let go of Hans's hand, while this one proposed to play rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to go to bed first. And just like that, on his first night in this world, Bjorn found someone to keep him warm and safe through the night. After a quick game, Hans won the first sleep break. Of course, Bjorn would lose, as his luck was straight up garbage. Hans then handed Bjorn a watch and instructed him on how to use it, which was only natural as people of this world saw barbarians as hairless baboons. The man even proposed to explain the concept to Bjorn once again, yet Bjorn claimed this to be unnecessary. It was rather annoying to be considered stupid by everyone else, yet it could come in handy at the right time. With that, Hans, the experienced adventurer, began to sleep like a baby. Bjorn wondered if the man would lend him the sleeping bag when his turn comes. It was relieving to see that there was no enemy approaching, but it was also boring, and so Bjorn urged time to pass. And the time did just that. Bjorn then rushed to wake up Hans. Nothing interesting happened on the first shift. It was now Bjorn's turn to enjoy 2 full hours of sleep. Even so, he refused to rest, as it was too dangerous to trust the sassy stranger. The barbarian then began to snore. He wanted to pass himself off as a caveman that was exhausted. Our hero feared that the man wouldn't notice him awake. Yet his ruse worked perfectly on his new boyfriend, who was easy to read, seeing how he deemed barbarians to be dumb. Now Bjorn seemed completely helpless. Thus, if Hans was planning something, now was the best time for him to take action. In the end, Bjorn was unable to shut his eye. He was rather annoyed that the sassy man didn't make a move on his sleeping body. Our hero began regretting not sleeping. Yet, not sleeping was for the best, as only someone as foolish as a barbarian would quickly trust a complete stranger. And so, as our hero found himself fighting the urge to sleep, someone suddenly woke him up. Hans just woke up. The barbarian affirmed that he was awake, so the man pointed out how he was drooling. Bjorn apologized, but upon seeing that the man wasn't upset by this fatal mistake, he immediately became frightened. In order to test something, he offered to let the man sleep some more as a token of apology. But the weird guy affirmed that it won't be necessary and urged Bjorn to get some shut-eye instead. There was no doubt left in Bjorn's mind. Hans acted nicely and lent him a helping hand in his time of need. He didn't even scold him for falling asleep during his guard turn. To top it off, he even declined compensation. According to the gamer, no one was this kind in this game, which is why he immediately opened his eyes. Bjorn noticed hands above his head. Now with his hammer in hand, he offered to let his knight companion sleep some more, and so, just as the hammer was about to smash our hero's skull, he quickly evaded before standing on his feet. Hans was horrified to see that his surprise attack had failed. Now the barbarian was really angry, and to make things worse, his attacker was now trying to justify himself. And so, he charged at him shield first, before knocking him up with his shield, annoyed by how stupid he was being considered. Hans started to cough blood, yet he did his best to stay on his feet. The terrified twink wanted to justify himself, It seemed like he was more resilient than goblins, as he didn't die from a single hit. So Bjorn decided to smash him once again. This time, Hans was blasted into the wall. He tried his best to stand up and catch his breath. Now, Hans had to face the full wrath of a barbarian. The sassy man started to beg for his own life. Our hero demanded to know why Hans decided to betray him. Hans claimed that he was going to knock out Bjorn and flee with his magic crystals, yet this was hard to believe as he didn't have that much. The man then explained that he wanted to also take his shield and sell it, as barbarian weapons were quite expensive on the market. Hans thought that these confessions would let Bjorn spare him, only to then get kicked in the face, as he was still hiding some secrets. Bjorn then stepped on his boyfriend in a completely platonic way and demanded to know why he was ready to murder another adventurer, which was a serious crime in this game. And so, the sassy man confessed that he wanted the heart of our hero. This left Bjorn speechless. According to Hans, the price of barbarian hearts had recently skyrocketed. They were now important ingredients for a new spell. At that moment, Bjorn understood that this man only saw him as a monster with a huge reward on its head despite it being tough to catch. When asked why he didn't make his move during his first guard shift, the parasite declared that he was also using Bjorn to get some sleep. Now having told Bjorn everything, Hans was hoping that he would let him go, and yet the barbarian stayed silent. Our hero then grinned as he found this hilarious. The gamer was well aware that the dungeon was filled with parasites similar to Hans. He also knew very well that he couldn't afford to forgive them all. The sassy man tried to argue that he was special. He claimed that he would give the barbarian everything that he owns once outside of the labyrinth, yet Bjorn tightened his grip over his shield. On his first day after crawling inside another man's body, the protagonist took the life of his one-night stand. His first murder was rewarded with a mental stat point. 2 days had passed since the gamer became Bjorn. He had equipped himself with Hans's shoulder pads, Hans's leather boots, his hammer, as well as his backpack. Our hero would no longer roam the labyrinth like an animal, as he now had a bottle to drink water, a compass, a watch, and even some first aid equipment, which was rather laughable, as the only way for Bjorn to acquire decent human equipment was to loot it after killing one. With his new gear, the level 1 adventurer had acquired good additional stats. One hit from the hammer was enough to slay a goblin. Bjorn began thinking that he should have chosen a weapon instead of a shield, but quickly ditched the idea, as he didn't know he would be such a skilled fighter. Then again, he was using the body of another. He was then approached by 2 little green creatures. On the second day in the labyrinth, goblins started to spawn in groups of 2. Yet now with his new hammer, Bjorn became stronger than ever. Thus, killing and farming became extremely easy. After all, one swing of the hammer was enough to destroy the skulls of the goblins. Even so, one important issue remained unsolved. After hunting monsters relentlessly, Bjorn was now almost out of energy and needed to sleep at once. At first he thought that he could just sleep alone, now that he had gained some resistance to goblin attacks. Yet things weren't that easy. As soon as Bjorn closes his eyes, goblins always appear. This time, Bjorn wasn't even able to sleep for 10 minutes, and thus, he charged at the goblins and smashed their skulls. Now the barbarian had terminated all threats. He began wishing that he would finally be able to close his eyes without being touched. When suddenly, the system informed Bjorn that he had been penetrated without his consent. He was annoyed by the fact that he didn't sense the goblin approaching, and so he bashed his skull in. The other goblin watched in horror as his little friend was turned into green mashed potato. Fear slowly overtook him as the giant barbarian turned to face him. It was a relief to see the goblin flee, as Bjorn was too tired to pursue it. It was horrifying to think that if the goblin was able to jump any higher, it would have ended up in the throat of our hero. He pulled out a potion to treat himself, and began to think that he must sleep at once, as he couldn't even sense the enemy approaching. It was hilarious to see that the healing potion was more painful than the actual wound. 14 hours had passed since Bjorn committed murder, and he couldn't bring himself to trust humans as night companions, seeing how valuable his heart is. Thus he had the idea of looking for someone of his kin. The first people to ask him as a night companion were humans, so were the second. Even the third invite he received didn't come from another barbarian. Since, unlike yesterday, he wasn't covered in blood, the barbarian who explained that he was looking for someone of his kind seemed friendly and trustworthy enough to be a night partner. It was then explained to Bjorn that he would have a hard time finding another barbarian. Unlike our pathetic loser, most barbarians that graduated were mighty enough to ascend to the other floors, which is why it would be hard to find one inside this cave. And so, as the humans bid him farewell, our hero began to think that he should stop looking for his people. Bjorn simply needed to spend the night with anyone that isn't human. He just needed to find another minority similar to him, like a trusty elf or an honest dwarf. Most races, unlike humans, were special enough to not be easily blinded by greed. Only then did our big chest spot something. After 60 minutes of looking for a night companion from another race, Bjorn had found the perfect candidate. Our hero was now in front of a cute injured elf girl. The barbarian asked the one with pointy ears if she had any companions with her. Yet the elf stood wary of him, which was only natural for an injured elf in front of a giant barbarian. The protagonist, who was eyeing the girl for totally normal reasons, noticed that she was injured in the stomach, but highly doubted that the one behind it was a goblin. Thus, Bjorn asked the elf if a human had harmed her. Only then did the elf stand up. She then went on her knees and started to beg the other skirt wearer for help. This was rather unexpected. The elf begged the barbarian to spare her life, as she needed to return home to her little brother. Bjorn was stunned to see that this waifu had no fighting spirit, as elves were supposed to be this cold, mysterious, and edgy race. He would have approached the girl more casually if he had known she was so pathetic. Thus, he decided to reassure her with a heartwarming smile. But what seemed to be like an attempt of goodwill was immediately interpreted as a threat due to the caveman's natural ugliness. The elf begged the man to suppress his barbarian nature and cried for mercy. This made Bjorn question the actions of his race, as he was unable to understand the actions that would lead his primitive race to have such a bad name. Bjorn then decided to resume the conversation after the girl tended to her wound. He was relieved to learn that the plant he tossed along with the bandages turned out to be lyco leaves and not some poisonous plant. The elf asked the barbarian why he was helping her. So the barbarian explained to the elf that kindness could be shown to another even without an ulterior motive, despite clearly having one. Our virgin wanted to spend the night with the girl. Thus, he even offered to protect her while she treats herself. It may look like our hero was taking advantage of the elf, but she clearly needed his help. A gorgeous maiden that is tired and injured would naturally have a harder time than a barbarian like Bjorn. The elf was finally done treating herself. She was surprisingly fast with her hands, and with her guard finally down, she was ready to have a conversation. Our hero started by introducing himself to the girl, who revealed her name to be Erwin. When asked why she was afraid of him at first, Erwin claimed that this was due to the racial differences confusing Bjorn even more. It all then made sense to our guy upon learning that elves and barbarians are in conflict with each other, which was rather weird as this wasn't mentioned in the game. Erwin rushed to correct herself by claiming that the war ended a decade ago and explained that she doesn't hate the barbarians. And so, as she expressed that she just doesn't want to fight, our hero realized that it was too late to find someone other than this gorgeous elf to spend the night with. What a shame. With that, the barbarian revealed that he doesn't want to fight either. Bjorn then asked Erwin to spend the night with him. He clarified that he was exhausted and that he would welcome her help. Erwin then decided to give it a thought. In the end, she asked Bjorn to swear her safety on his honor as a warrior, as it was sacred for barbarians. She then explained that she would swear the same on the honor of her tribe. But little did she know, the gamer didn't care about his honor but decided to use it regardless. But before sealing the agreement, Bjorn decided to take care of an important matter. The gamer, who had been referred to as Mr. all along by the girl, wanted his 20-year-old character to be addressed more casually. And so, the delicate maiden swore on her tribe, while our baboon swore on his honor. And with the two of them having vowed not to hurt the other, Bjorn was finally free to sleep. Without even asking Erwin, Bjorn declared that he shall rest first. He then handed her his hard-earned watch, to watch the time while asking her to take good care of it. At first, our hero wanted to sleep for a few minutes in order to stay wary, but shortly after, the girl woke him up. Erwin handed Bjorn his watch. After that, he had slept his full 2 hours. The blanket and backpack were so comfortable that Bjorn wouldn't have survived Hans's attack if he had handed them to him. Thus, he decided to hand them to the elf, and despite wanting to argue at first, upon seeing how comfy and warm they were, she immediately accepted his kindness. It didn't take her long before falling asleep. She must have had a hard day just like our hero. Since he now had the time to think about how the time spent here seemed longer than 3 days, Bjorn's state had obviously improved. He was certain that back in the real world, no one had reported him missing, as he was a sad and pathetic loner who no one would visit. He wanted to stop thinking about how there was nothing for him in the real world, as it was enough to break his willpower. He still had some guard shifts before resuming his adventure. 1 hour and 50 minutes had already passed. Bjorn began to wonder. He started thinking about partying up with Erwin. Being an elf, she would be useful in combat against the swarms of goblins, yet teaming up would mean that his profit would be divided. Seeing how he could take on less than 5 goblins in one go, he began to think about whether he should team up with the elf or not. Suddenly, he spotted humans passing by. They quickly recognized the elf upon seeing her weapons on the ground. Bjorn quickly grabbed his shield as the humans approached them and asked about his link to the girl. The greasy one found it shocking to see the barbarian and the elf guarding each other while sleeping, and asked how much time was left until the end of their contract. The imposing Minnie, Skirt, got angry and refused to answer. The humans were left frightened by the half-naked man. Seeing this, they decided to go on their way. Bjorn felt uneasy as these two were clearly searching for Erwin. and so he rushed to wake her up, yet the elf demanded to sleep for 5 more minutes. It was shocking to see the elf act like a college student, sacrificing her safety and future just for some extra minutes of sleep. Bjorn tried to wake up the girl once again. It didn't take him too much touching to see that Erwin was pretending to be asleep. And so, even before the lady could realize what was happening, the barbarian quickly stood her up. Bjorn demanded to know why Erwin was faking her sleep, so she revealed how she was scared that Bjorn would leave her alone. Her fear was only natural, as in the end, the two of them were short-term allies united by exhaustion. And now, the agreed partnership came to an end as the bigger chest asked the smaller one about her relationship with the two humans. Erwin affirmed that she didn't know them. So when asked about why they were looking for her, she explained that they must be related to the human that hurt her. Based on the emblem on their chest, they all must be part of the Crystal Union. Bjorn realized that he should ditch the girl, as she was being pursued by an entire clan. Then again, this poor soul was still 20 years old. Thus, he decided to continue their chat while walking. Bjorn wanted to hear the story of Erwin before deciding whether to help her or not. Seeing how the man agreed to hear her out while trying to catch up with his schedule, the girl was left overjoyed. Erwin met those humans as her first night companions in the labyrinth. She sensed something odd and small near her, which is why she opened her eyes. To her horror, the supposed ally was pulling down his pants, which explains the small thing, and urged her to fall back to sleep. Later on, Erwin discovered that the man in question was a manager of the Crystal Union that was pretty active on the first floor. Erwin escaped by miracle, yet got injured, as the Union members kept on attacking her. This intrigued the barbarian. The girl explained that they used message crystals to track her down, but since these items weren't in the game, the gamer asked for an explanation. To make it simple, these crystals work like magic walkie-talkies over a distance of 300 meters. Combining this communication device with the immense manpower of the Union, it was safe to say that the elf wouldn't survive on her own. Bjorn found that the elf didn't do anything that was worth pursuing. He began to wonder if the humans were trying to silence her, so she revealed that it wasn't the case. When she escaped from the man, Erwin swung her knife in panic. And to Bjorn's shock, it just so happened to hit something rather delicate. Frightened for his fellow male, Bjorn urged the girl to elaborate further. Her inability to name the organ made it obvious that she cut the little bird. Erwin began to chuckle as she explained that the man's precious got completely severed, and that not even potions were able to reattach it. Yet, Bjorn knew very well that the loss of a manhood, even a small one, was no laughing matter, and that the human had every reason to hunt her down. Yet, one couldn't say that the filthy man didn't deserve such a fate. Only then did Erwin notice something alarming. She quickly alerted her companion that they were being followed, and that he shouldn't turn around. According to the elf, the enemy was 150 meters away. Normally, a regular person wouldn't be able to sense a danger this far, yet elves were full of surprises. Bjorn suggested running faster, so Erwin explained that she doesn't mind it. The injury of the elf reopened, and yet she didn't complain about the pain. This was rather impressive. The distance between the heroes and their pursuer remained 150 meters. This meant that the chaser, who must have contacted his allies by now, was still on their tail even after going faster. The most logical move would be to terminate the enemy, yet Bjorn couldn't call the shots as he wasn't the target. Yet there was no going back after taking a life, which is why the protagonist needed to carefully weigh the pros and cons of this plan. A firm decision was needed at once. He then turned to the elf and asked about her quality. The waifu explained that she excels at laundry and cleaning, but is a bad cook, which baffled the barbarian. The bigger chest clarified to the smaller one that he was asking about her battle skills. Erwin was a good archer and had a talent for flame spirit magic. This made her a perfect elf archer on top of possessing the rarest element. Bjorn then asked Erwin if she had ever taken a life before. The girl explained that she doesn't, but revealed that she had the guts to do it. After hearing this, everything was now clear. Our barbarian asked the elf to join his party until they escaped this place before proposing an unequal split of the rewards. Instead of complaining, the elf immediately accepted the offer. Erwin then stated that the enemy had gotten closer by 50 meters. Bjorn felt the heat, as despite running at full speed, the human was able to catch up to them. And upon spotting a tunnel, he decided to adopt a different approach. The thick thighs asked the skinny ones to summon the flame spirits. Erwin immediately complied. Bjorn didn't expect to return to the darkness out of his own free will. The enemy kept on approaching our heroes. Thus, Erwin was asked to call off the fire spirit. Only then did a figure appear in the darkness. The barbarian realized that they must be going up against a pro-tracker, as he decided to enter the darkness despite it being pitch black, and so he turned to his elven ally and asked her to take the shot. Erwin aimed her bow before hitting the human right between his eyes. The girl was disgusted and began to tremble upon taking her first life. Bjorn reassured the girl that her firm shot had saved them from danger. Our baboon then approached the man who just got penetrated. He then picked up his walkie-talkie. The other side of the line began to panic as the one who was chasing our heroes wasn't responding and sent a call to all available units. Things were now getting more difficult as every agent of the Crystal Union was asked to head to the Goblin District. Shortly after, it was annoying to see that the man they just murdered didn't have anything of great value on him. The pursuer had some daggers and a pouch full of crystals. Erwin, who shot the man, did the only logical thing and took his clothes, as, according to Bjorn, they were superior to her old outfit. The aura of the elf immediately changed for the better upon wearing the leather suit. Bjorn was curious about the message stone, so it was explained to him how it works with the press of a button. The gamer quickly found it. Our heroes then intercepted a message destined for the entire team, claiming that the pursuer was taken down by the target and her barbaric partner. But what truly horrified the elf was the discovery of the bounty of 1,000 gold on her head. Bjorn reassured the smaller chest and asked her to summon the spirit. And thus, he declared that they would be heading to the second floor. Erwin asked the protagonist if he truly wanted to go to the second floor. Bjorn confirmed. This made the elf warn him about the huge power gap between the first level and the second. Bjorn claimed that they could also camp near the entrance, as the two of them were a great pair. This made the girl blush, thinking that the barbarian was talking about ships. Naturally, a good archer like Erwi dominating from a distance and a raging beast on the front like the hero were a good combination. Even so, the girl wasn't sure that the two of them could even survive the second floor, as it seemed like they were running from bad to worse. But herself, doubts were immediately overshadowed by an unyielding fear, as the enemy promised the one that would catch her the right to use her as a socket or Nutella jar on top of the bounty. Bjorn reassured her that he shall not leave her side. Another human on the frequency asked for the right to chop off some of her limbs, but he would leave the most goonable parts intact. With that, Erwin agreed to leave the first level. And just like that, the enemy provided the hero with the persuasion that he required, and yet, he was pissed off. Our man had always enjoyed helping others when he saw it fit. And so, doing something good, on top of messing with such disgusting humans, would seem like a dream mission in the eyes of the protagonist. When asked if he knows the way to the second floor, Bjorn explained that roaming the dungeon mindlessly would get them there eventually. In this game, the path from one floor to another always exists within the dark region of the labyrinths. At that moment, the one with the pants noticed something alarming. She had spotted a goblin trap that appeared late, and our guy was about to walk into it. Only then did he realize that the light almost entirely prevents the spawn of goblins and their traps. And so, as the mini-skirt began to realize how truly unlucky he was to spawn in the darkness, the pants decided to take care of the trap. Bjorn then urged the lady to not use the spirit. Erwin affirmed that she wasn't intending to in the first place. It was safe to say that this waifu was an open book and that she was easy to read. Only then was the girl attacked by two Genshin gamers. The first one tried to penetrate her with his tiny knife, only to be dodged easily. The same goblin then received an arrow in the middle of the skull. At that moment, the other green pest attacked. He tried to slash the girl, only for her to dodge and aim. And just like that, blood splattered everywhere. The majestic elf was able to take down two goblins with ease. It didn't take her long to switch back to her blonde mode and ask the tall guy about her performance. Bjorn was amazed by her skills and immediately praised her for them. The simpleton then presented the barbarian with the crystals. She reminded him of how their agreement stipulates that she would only take 90% of the profit. Erwin claimed that with the profit shares, she would have to work extra hard to buy her little brother the item he was asking for. Despite how innocent the elf seemed and sounded, Bjorn couldn't help but feel insulted due to the deal he imposed. Only then was it announced that the bounty on the head of Erwin was doubled, leaving her concerned. Bjorn reassured her that their opponents don't seem very coordinated and that they are not likely to enter the darkness. It was also reassuring to see that many members of the Union were heavily invested in her chase and that they were taking breaks. Our hero began to think that it was rather odd that everything was going so well, given his bad luck. And just like that, our guy jinxed himself as goals appeared. This was rather shocking, as each part of the first floor was occupied by a certain race of monsters, with the south being the turf of the ghouls. In other words, our heroes had ventured too far into the cave. As the elf asked if she had to fight the ghouls alone, Bjorn began to think of the odd leveling system of the dungeon. He decided to help the girl, as only by killing a monster from each race for the first time could he level up. In other words, he had to fill his Pokédex, starting with the ghouls. Bjorn would now slay the smelly creeps on the front, while his archer friend kills those in the back. Ghouls would only attack players once they entered a certain radius. At that moment, what looked like computer science major students spotted the barbarian and the elf. The monsters attacked, but Bjorn had already predicted this outcome. Thus, he quickly repelled the first ghoul with his shield. He then decided to resort to the hammer that he had stolen in order to kill this weak rank 9 monster that surpasses the goblins in strength and speed. Only then does one of them try to take our mini skirt from behind, only to find itself pierced with an arrow. It was easy to take care of such a monster with a capable helper. Each of our heroes had now killed his first ghoul. With that, the barbarian and the elf kept on walking north until the third day dawned. At that moment, blood was spotted. Erwin wanted to follow this mysterious trail of blood, which made the bigger chest twitch. What happened next was rather ironic. Bjorn found himself in front of the goblin trap that almost killed him and the sandal he was wearing. Our guy was left speechless. The fact that after all he went through, he returned to his starting point. And to make things worse, it turned out that the portal was right near the cursed trap. And so upon recalling all that he had undergone due to this trap, especially the fact that it made him miss the gate, Bjorn burst out in rage and smashed it with his hammer. The bad luck that he has was unbelievable, as it made him go in the wrong direction. To his shock, the airhead next to him assumed that she had done something to anger him. Bjorn tried his best to calmly explain to Erwin that his anger had nothing to do with her. Only then did she come to a revelation. Judging by her reaction, the protagonist assumed that she had figured out what happened to him here. But upon seeing how she started to mourn his allies that fell in this place, he realized that he had once again overestimated the intelligence of the elf. When asked if she was prepared to go to the next level, Erwin claimed that despite being anxious, she was certain that she would survive as long as Bjorn stayed by her side. Putting aside the fact that this girl talks more than necessary, our guy entered the portal while also being determined to survive. And just like that, the party entered the goblin forest. Upon entering the second level, the elf and the barbarian found themselves falling. And while Erwin gracefully landed on her feet, our hero fell face first on the ground like the baboon that he is. After wondering about the sensation of passing through a portal for so long, he finally now knows that it feels like being in the mouth of a frog. Erwin, who landed perfectly due to her elven grace, was surprised by their falling arrival, as no one had warned her about it. According to our hero, they were now in the goblin forest, which was in the north of this floor. Our heroes had a constant starry sky to enlighten them, a portal that would allow them to return to the lower floor in case of danger, and no monsters near them. According to the intel of Erwin, the second floor shouldn't be a forest, so Bjorn explained that not the entire floor was like this. The first floor had 4 portals, with the first leading to the northern goblin forest, the second to the lair of the beasts, the third taking to the land of the undead, and the western one to the clobbering dark rocky mountains. This made the elf recall that no matter the path they take, it will ultimately lead to the third level. When asked for a plan, Bjorn asked his partner if she knew how to get back from the labyrinth to the city. According to Erwin, they would be automatically rejected by the labyrinth to the city once it closes. The third floor would stay open for 7 days and eject the adventurer afterwards, and the second one for 10 days. Since the noobs of the Crystal Unions won't dare to enter this place, they would spend 7 days in it before going back to the first. The party had to roam the place a little, as staying next to the gate would only bring them harm. And with that, the one wearing the pants in this relationship was to guide the other. Nostalgia started to kick in for the elf. Despite this place being filled with League players, like a femboy cosplayer comment section, it somehow reminded her of the fairy shrine. Erwin then asked her friend to be wary of his steps, as this place was filled with traps, before pointing him to a bunch. Bjorn couldn't locate the traps, so Erwin revealed that they were hidden under the leaves, and thus she threw a rock in order to waste the trap. It was surprising to see the idiot elf looking dependable for once. Yet after giving it a thought, Bjorn praised her for her rock throwing and not her skills in order to not inflate her ego. That's right, in order to not look like a loser, the hero chose to act as a jerk. He informed Erwin that she shouldn't celebrate over nothing, as she was already a good adventurer. Upon hearing this, the elf couldn't help but feel flattered. Judging by how she reacted to compliments, the girl seemed easy to manipulate. Erwin couldn't sense any monster nearby despite the many traps, as they were a characteristic of the forest, unlike the first floor, where goblins had to lay them. With that, our heroes decided to continue their progress. In the game, the Goblin Forest is just like a League of Legends lobby, and was filled with goblins that attack in hordes that sometimes had archers. Despite its borders being home to mutants and powerful creatures, it wouldn't impact our heroes who would stay near the portal. The plan was to take care of all the traps in order to widen the explored area and retreat to the first floor in case of danger. And thus, Erwin began to deactivate the traps in order to widen the covered area and to remove any handicaps in case they needed to run away. Upon defusing a few, the elf started to crave compliments, so Bjorn called her a good adventurer once again. The archer then noticed something. A horde of goblins had appeared nearby. Predicting the exact number was hard for the elf, yet she was able to assert that there were more than 10 and that they were a few meters away. From the looks of it, the green creatures hadn't noticed the adventurers yet. Bjorn decided to take them down and asked Erwin how close she could get, so she revealed how she could go unnoticed beyond 30 meters. With that, the party decided to follow the plan in order to hunt. The elf was so swift that even when walking in grass, her boots didn't emit a sound. At that moment, the green creatures were spotted. Erwin quickly waved to her partner. The girl then aimed her bow before releasing her arrow. At that moment, our hero made his move. He was unable to tell if his partner had actually hit a goblin, as they were too far away. With that, Bjorn entered the battle. And so, a huge half-nude battle began. The second floor was way too different from the first one. Here, the spawning number of goblins had tripled, and this horde even had a warrior with it, making it intimidating. Yet for some reason the gamer wasn't afraid. In fact, his barbarian heart started to beat with excitement. For some god-only known reason, our guy charged at the monsters while yelling Sparta, like he had a decent pair of Speedos instead of a cute skirt. With that, he smashed the head of the first goblin. He then noticed two others trying to surprise him from the sides. Yet, he easily took care of them. The barbarian kept on butchering the goblins with ease. He then turned around and rushed another one. Only then did he feel startled. Bjorn was able to dodge the knife of an enemy at the right moment. If he had failed to react in time, our hero would have lost the head he had stolen. These little creatures that would be threatening even in groups of 5 kept on pressuring the giant barbarian. Normally, Bjorn wouldn't be able to get out of this battle uninjured. Yet things become different if he has a trustworthy ally. Seeing how the archer had regained her post, the barbarian decided to put an end to the battle, and thus he dared the little creatures to approach. Our guy had now killed his first goblin warrior. Terminating this group allowed him to earn 11 crystals at once. This was rather impressive as it took an entire day to secure 44 on the first floor, but also disappointing, as the gear of the goblin warrior that just vanished could have been useful to the player. Bjorn then gave the crystal that he had gotten from the warrior to the archer, as they were more precious than that of the regular goblin. With that, our heroes decided to resume their adventure. Encounters with goblin gangs became far more frequent after getting 3 kilometers away from the portal. This one also comes with an archer. The green creature then suddenly began to vanish. Seeing this, Bjorn urged Erwin to stay on her guard, as goblin archers make things harder for them. Yet even with the numbers against them, the party's victory was almost guaranteed. While rampaging, Bjorn found himself in the scope of the enemy. Yet with the body of the man he had crawled inside of, he only needed to focus a little in order to evade the flying arrows. Now the monster had been spotted, and with that, our enraged baboon charged at him. The poor creature didn't even have enough time to react and was sent flying through the air, marking the first time our hero killed a goblin archer. The party then decided to rest for some time, as they had been fighting for 15 hours straight. This time, Erwin was allowed to sleep first and would even be provided with the backpack and the blanket. After 15 hours, our heroes finally laid down their weapons. It was the first time that the tired elf made noises while sleeping. This was proof that she feels safe by the side of the protagonist. The party had fought for more than half a day. Aside from the great rewards they had earned on the second floor, they had also stumbled upon many parties of 3 members or more, with some even having minorities in them. Even if he and the elf simply happened to pass by them, the mere sight of the other adventurers was somehow tiring. After all, hunters were far more dangerous than goblins. On top of that, Bjorn now had something with him that he must protect. The elf suddenly opened her eyes upon hearing the protagonist claim that her pretty face would make things harder. When asked if he truly meant it, the one who was startled by the elf suddenly waking up urged her to go back to sleep. As Erwin cheerfully agreed, Bjorn began to wonder why he got the Labrador of the supposedly cold elf race. On day number 4, our heroes rested. On the 5th, they kept on following their daily hunting routine. Day number 6 passed quickly, until finally on day 7, their last day in the labyrinth dawned, with the elf and the barbarian exhausted, as there were almost 20 hours until the first floor closed. Erwin affirmed that she would sleep as soon as they returned to the first level. The protagonist decided to return to the first floor at once, as they couldn't risk arriving late. The appearance of new traps meant that the goblin gangs had reappeared as well. Seeing how there was a group of 12 jobless LoL players near them with 2 archers and 2 warriors in their group, Bjorn decided to engage. The goblin gang was chilling peacefully when one of them got his skull violated by an arrow. Next thing the goblin knew, there was a giant half-naked giant in front of them with the eyes of a predator. Upon hearing the savage scream, the monsters were left frightened. Bjorn would try to take down the warriors and leave the archers to the elf. With that, the goblin started to be tossed left and right. After his numerous battles, Bjorn had mastered the art of bullying goblins for the sake of profit. Erwin had also gained quite the experience at fighting goblins, as her shots were always on point and convenient. The girl had taken care of the 2 goblin archers before they could even try to attack our guy. Thus, he praised Erwin for her performance, leaving her flattered. Even so, he urged her to let him know once the enemy archers had been wiped out, as he spent the entire fight worried about them. But to his shock, the girl claimed that she didn't do so, as she wasn't certain that there were only two. Indeed, misinformation was far more lethal than ignorance, which proves that Erwin had learned a lot during this past week, which made Bjorn feel like a proud father. Suddenly, something intriguing started to happen with one of the vanishing goblin archers. Its essence had appeared. This left our guy quite alerted. Essence was a feature of the game and a great treasure for adventurers that would allow the gamer to gain a certain trait of the monster it came from, once per level. The essence also varies from one goblin type to another, which is why one must be careful of the essence that he takes. This item was also impossible to find, which is why its appearance here was shocking. Bjorn couldn't help but sweat, as this was way too good of a reward with his misfortune. When asked if this essence would turn its consumer into a goblin, Bjorn explained to Erwin that it can only give the consumer a goblin skill. A good example of this was the human who chased the party back to the first floor, where he used his nose to track them down after consuming a razor mane wolf's essence. Erwin explained that she wasn't interested in the essence, yet got bold enough to state that she would gladly take it if he didn't want it. The gamer already had an essence in mind that would suit the barbarian he was now inside, and he was even ready to spend a fortune later on in order to get it. And just as our guy started his monologue, he was suddenly interrupted. A rival party had arrived at the scene. The humans demanded the elf and the barbarian explain their actions at once. And while Erwin was confused, Bjorn explained to her that these hunters weren't here to talk. And just like that, he pushed her towards the essence. The magic gem had the honor of touching something that our hero never knew. Upon seeing this blinding light, the humans were left furious as they were about to claim this essence for themselves. Meanwhile, Erwin thanked Bjorn for his gift, the same Bjorn who was expecting this type of parasite to come here upon seeing the essence and try to steal it, but luckily for them, it had already been consumed. With that, Bjorn dared the humans to approach. Seeing how they were outnumbered, our heroes needed to show their teeth in order to not seem weak. Now the humans could either fight a giant baboon and his cute girlfriend or run for their lives. With that, the party decided to run as fast as possible while still on their guard until they reached the portal. Erwin began to wonder if the four humans would chase them to the first level. So Bjorn explained that even if they didn't, those who ran away would surely be seen once again. The fact that this party had 4 members, which was perfect for the second floor, and that they were relaxing near the portal meant that they also planned on exiting the labyrinth on day 7. Erwin was amazed by how smart the barbarian was, as he had figured out that the rival hunters had the same plan as them. Only then did she feel something frightening. According to the elf, there was a group of goblins nearby, but this time, Bjorn wanted to avoid it. Erwin explained that the fight was inevitable as the creatures were running towards them. This was rather shocking, as due to the abilities of Erwin, they were always able to find the goblins first. This was rather suspicious, which is why the gamer decided to change their course, when suddenly an arrow flew at the elf out of nowhere. But Bjorn reacted just in time to save her. The alarming thing was that this was no goblin arrow. Thus, the thick thighs explained to the skinny ones that the rival party from earlier was attacking them. They must have provoked the goblins and were now waiting for our heroes on the opposing side. Since the enemy must be trying to exhaust them using goblins, Bjorn asked Erwin to brace herself for battle by using her new ability. Seeing how the airhead was confused, he explained that he was referring to the power of the essence. Every essence carried different powers, and since Erwin got the one of a goblin archer, she would gain a passive that would poison her arrows, and an active skill that would let her go invisible. As the elf clarified that she didn't know how to activate her skills, these ones showed themselves on their own. The girl was shocked to see that her new power, Thief Steps, was allowing her to disappear. This made Bjorn wonder if a word is needed to activate the skill, or if it is triggered by the will of the user. With that, he tossed her his backpack. Our guy decided to face the league players on his own and ordered the girl to focus on the enemy archer. Hearing this, Erwin couldn't help but worry about his safety. The hero stated that they were short on time and instructed her not to miss the enemy archer once he gave her the signal. With that, the barbarian asked the elf to wait for his signal as he rushed to the goblins, but didn't tell her about the nature of the said signal. After a few steps, our guy decided to stop running. The goblins were now in front of him. The human enemies still hadn't made another move after firing an arrow at Erwin. It was safe to assume that they would show up once the goblin gang was wiped out. And thus, our guy began to fight about 10 goblins, with 2 of them being swordsmen. At first he assumed that there were no goblin archers because no arrows were fired at him. But just like that, he jinxed himself. Now he would have to be wary of incoming arrows, but upon being stabbed in the back, he was reminded to mind the small fry in front of him as well. On top of the goblins was the hero, who was now fighting alone. Would have to be wary of the enemy archer. The number of his injuries kept increasing. He then smashed one of his enemies and realized that his life was now truly in danger. Suddenly, he noticed something alerting. Two long pointy things were now about to penetrate him, one from the front and the other from behind. The first was fired from a goblin bow, and the second from a human crossbow. Seeing how it was impossible for our baboon to shield himself from two arrows at once, he decided to focus on the one fired by the human. Bjorn's misfortune made the other arrow hit his elbow. To top it off, the small dirty tip of the goblin was poisonous, making the left arm it hit unusable. Now with one arm left, Bjorn ditched the hammer, pulled out the arrow from his arm, and decided to fight with his shield alone. The real issue wasn't the goblins that could be killed with the swing of a hammer, but the human enemy. The shield was vital in order to block the projectiles of the crossbow, and thus the one-armed barbarian kept on raging through the goblins. But no matter how many league players he takes out, more always appear. At that moment, the barbarian let out a raging aura that made the remaining goblins run for their lives. There was no need to chase the coward that just fled. With that, the real enemy made its entrance while praising the gamer for holding his ground against the goblins. The humans finally showed themselves. Our hero had expected this party to be the culprits yet couldn't see their archer anywhere. The knight then demanded to know the whereabouts of the elf. Yet Bjorn didn't answer and dared them to approach. Barbarians were formidable enough to stand tall even after banging a gang of 10 goblins to death. Yet seeing how the one right here was wounded, the humans offered him mercy in exchange for Erwin. Our hero couldn't help but smirk, as he knew very well that this mercy was but a stupid lie. This smile made him seem like a madman in the eyes of the enemy, and they decided to interrogate him after the battle. The humans began to brace themselves and decided to treat Bjorn like some sort of monster to hunt. The left arm was still out of commission, and while hoping that Erwin had killed the enemy archer, Bjorn needed to give her a special signal that she would recognize, and thus he lifted his middle finger into the air. This idea was simply genius. The enemy party didn't quite catch this signal, and from the looks of it, neither did Erwin. Yet our hero had no choice but to place his faith in her. And just like that, he clashed with the enemy. At that moment, the knight urged his friend Elias to act. With that, the swordsman known as Elias, who was found strong by the barbarian, saved his friend at the last moment. Even so, Bjorn couldn't afford to run away. The gamer needed to attract the attention of the enemy long enough to create an opportunity for his archer. Yet while being attacked from behind, he began to fear that Erwin had already been taken out by the enemy archer. When suddenly an arrow came flying towards the adventurers. All were left shocked, as no one knew who the shooter was. But seeing how the target of the arrow turned out to be the humans, it was safe to assume that the elf had launched it. The shield bearer decided to focus on the incoming projectiles while his friends took care of Bjorn. Seeing how easily the one in armor was blocking the arrows, the victorious secret model realized that he was preparing himself for this. At that moment, Bjorn was being threatened from the front as well as from behind. Our guy wasn't experienced enough to take on two guys at once. For that reason, sacrifices needed to be made. Seeing how the left arm was already useless, letting the samurai slash it in order to focus on the redhead wasn't a really bad idea. This made the protagonist seem like a monster in the eyes of the enemy. Bjorn then noticed something just in time, which is why this something missed the target of its attack. Our guy took a few steps back just in time. At that moment, something came flying towards Elias. His friend blocked the arrow just in time and urged him to keep his head into the fight, when suddenly, the shield caught fire. Unfortunately for the humans, the archer of the barbarian wasn't the average shooter with normal arrows. Erwin was a powerful spirit archer who managed to hit her target at last. And with that, the shield user fell to the ground while screaming in pain. The redhead realized that something must be done, and so, he decided to go find and kill Erwin, as Bjorn was unable to go after him. And seeing how his hands were already full, our hero had no choice but to trust his ally. The blows of the samurai were slowly pushing him back, so our hero tried to hit him with his shield. Elias's instinct quickly kicked in, and while it allowed him to dodge the shield, it didn't protect the ally that was behind him. Thus, as an enemy fell down, it was finally clear that Elias was using a hat to cover his shiny egg. With that, Baldy lashed out at the barbarian in front of him. It was truly shocking to see such a powerful swordsman party up with the rest of this pathetic bunch. Bjorn then kept on clashing with the elderly while thinking that associating with scum must be Elias's biggest sin. The man who kept on dodging backwards must be hoping that his friend would return after killing Erwin. Thus, the gamer decided to throw a fake punch to make Elias flinch before throwing his shield at his skull. With that, Bjorn finally grabbed the samurai by the collar. His instinct started to kick in. He then pulled him closer before opening wide and biting off the throat of the man before swallowing it, all in order to survive. And just like that, the savage took down all of his enemies. Bjorn then spat out the blood left in his mouth after finishing his meal. At that moment, Erwin rushed to join the caveman. The one who was worried about her partner seemed to have slain her two opponents as well. Seeing how injured he was, the girl handed him a potion and urged him to drink it. According to her, drinking the medicine was much more efficient than pouring it on the wound. especially when poison is involved. Bjorn didn't doubt the elf and quickly drank the red liquid she gave him. The potion made his insides feel like they were on fire. Pain coursed through every cell in his body, and his skin felt weird. Now fully healed, the skirt asked the pants about the time. Upon learning that there were still 40 minutes until the first floor closed, he realized that there was no time to rest. Erwin was shocked, as she was suddenly asked to strip. Unfortunately, fanservice was immediately interrupted by a killjoy barbarian who clarified that he was asking her to strip the dead enemies. And so, as the clock began to tick, our heroes decided to only loot what they deemed precious from their enemies. Erwin quickly went and fetched the items of the 2 humans that she had off-screened. As time kept on passing, our heroes rushed to the portal. As 50 seconds were left, our heroes finally saw it. And thus, in the span of 2 seconds, they managed to enter it. 8 seconds later, Erwin and Bjorn returned to the floor they had met on. It was funny to see the girl always stick the landing, while our barbarian licks the ground each time he exits a portal. Erwin praised the gamer on his performance. This one complimented her as well while thinking about how they made it here just in time. The girl then pointed out how the protagonist wanted to tell her something regarding the essence earlier. Bjorn explained that they needed to resume their conversation once outside, as the floor was about to close. Yet, Bjorn struggled to recall the name of the tavern he wanted to meet Erwin in. As the time was almost up, and after some big brain effort, Bjorn recalled the name of the tavern and asked his companion to meet him at Black Whale. And with that, the first floor was finally closed with our character being teleported outside. After a hellish journey, Bjorn had finally regained the city. Our hero was now in Rafdonia. Despite knowing that all adventurers would respawn in the same place, their number still shocked our barbarian. The several days spent inside the labyrinth were, in fact, a little more than a day in the real world. Suddenly, another primate came to greet our baboon. The protagonist recognized Karak, the second son of Vannon, who turned out to be his third. Shortly after, another barbarian came to greet Karak. It was easy to see how loved Karak was by others, as all came to him as soon as they got out of the labyrinth. Bjorn suddenly found himself in the middle of a barbaric, heartwarming reunion with people that he had only seen once. With that, the barbarians decided to go see which of them managed to earn the most magic crystals, and Bjorn was forced to tag along. Many barbarians managed to earn somewhere around 20,000 stones, yet one in particular got 4,000. All were impressed by the prowess of Karak, as amassing such a huge number was no easy feat. When it was our guy's turn, he presented his magic crystal bags to the lady. She immediately began to calculate them at an incredible speed. In the end, it turned out that Bjorn had acquired 413 stones. All were left impressed by this, as no barbarian had ever gotten so many stones. The barbarians were also impressed by the fact that Bjorn came back from the labyrinth with a backpack, new weapons, and even some new gear. Our hero quickly realized why his kind was so excited over his achievement. After all, he was the first ever to enter the labyrinth as an average barbarian and return from it as a civilized figure. And so, the gamer raised the weapon that he had stolen and claimed himself to be the greatest fighter ever. And while he enjoyed the attention, his race had to apologize for being so loud in the shop. Yet, the screams of the barbarian kept on echoing through the checkpoint as they were unable to keep their voice down. Later on inside the city, Bjorn decided to stick with his peers for a little longer, as there still might be some details about this world that he still ignores. Only then did he notice a familiar face. Erwin, his trusty companion, was just across the street. Seeing how she was associating with elegant and proper elves, he was left a bit jealous as he was forced to hang out in a tree with the rest of the hairless apes. Erwin noticed Bjorn and waved at him. Both of them agreed to see each other at night. Only then was Erwin forced to deny that she knows the barbarian, as the other elf asked her if they were acquainted. Bjorn was forced into the same situation as his kin asked him about his relationship with Erwin. According to Karak, there was no way that someone as mighty as our hero would be associated with an elf twink. This quickly annoyed the elves. Bjorn was getting tired of how unhinged his peers actually were. At that moment, the last couple of barbarians exited the shop. Seeing this, Bjorn proposed to move at once. There was no way for Bjorn to talk with Erwin with all of these tensions around, which is why he decided to converse with her at night. The sophisticated monkey then noticed a small child. He rushed to hug his father, who just returned from the labyrinth. Upon seeing people reuniting with their loved ones, the gamer recalled how Dungeon and Stone contained something about happy reunions. But sadly, it also had the sadness and pain of the loved ones of those who didn't return from the labyrinth. Despite having played the game many times, it was the first time that our hero saw those things in real life, which made him feel uneasy. Later on, all was poured. Primates and muscle mommies alike began to drown themselves in the alcohol. Bjorn was forcing himself to stay with his mentally challenged race, as, according to him, this was the best possible move. Then again, no good would come from hanging around these die-hard alcoholics. And thus, and to everyone's shock, Bjorn decided to leave the party early. It was rather shocking for the warriors to see the main event of the day leave in such a hurry, which made Bjorn worry that they were too fond of him to let him go. But fortunately, just like in his past life, no one actually cares if he leaves or stays. Sometime later, Bjorn began to roam the city. This place was peaceful. In this city, there was no one to harm our protagonist. Its laws enforced a pleasant sense of order everywhere. Here, Bjorn could fall on the ground without putting his life at risk and might even find someone to help him stand back up. True, this alien dimension might not be as civilized and modern as his home world. But despite that, our butt-naked bodybuilder was fond of the peace that this city provided. For the first time ever, Bjorn enjoyed a shower. He quickly laid down in bed. But despite his best efforts, he couldn't shake off this one thought that invaded his mind. Our hero was homesick and longed to go back to his pathetic and insignificant life, even though there was nothing for him back there. Later on that night, Bjorn woke up from his nap around 9 p.m. Bjorn, who had slept for 5 hours, would now go to Black Whale in order to see Erwin. Later on, upon asking an old man, Bjorn learned that Black Whale had disappeared a decade ago. Sadly, the man who inherited the pretty successful place managed to gamble it away. This confirmed the player's doubt regarding the original game taking place years before the current timeline, as he asked the old man about the new name of the tavern. And just like that, Bjorn arrived at Python Pooth. This place was different from the Black Whale he remembers in the game, and seeing how he was able to read the name, that meant that Bjorn knows this otherworldly language. The inside of the tavern was very chaotic and lively. At that moment, Erwin waved at our hero, yet she wasn't alone. The woman recognized the gamer as the barbarian from earlier that day. Bjorn immediately introduced himself to the lady, who quickly claimed herself to be Erwin's older sister. Seeing this, Bjorn asked the lady about her name, and when she asked to be referred to as Teresia, our guy quickly realized that this was just her family name. Teresia then decided to ask our hero, who was inside another man, a very important question. She demanded to know why the barbarian had invited her younger sister to meet him in a tavern alone so late at night. The lady was angry at how the barbarian had invited her younger sister to this tavern last night and didn't even bother to show up. According to her, he was pretty bold to show himself once again after what he did, but Bjorn had no clue what Teresia meant, making her think that he was playing dumb on purpose. Thus, he quickly turned to Erwin to ask her how long they had been in the city, making her reveal that it had been 30 hours. Upon hearing this, our hero realized that he didn't sleep for 4 or 5 hours but for a day and 4 or 5 hours. This explains why this short nap made Bjorn feel so refreshed. For that reason, Bjorn quickly realized that he owes Erwin an apology. Bjorn immediately presented his excuses and explained that he spent all of this time sleeping. Naturally, the older sister would be shocked, as she had never seen a barbarian say sorry. With that, she asked him why he wanted to see her sister. Sure, Bjorn could give an explanation and be the bigger person, but the primate was stingy and urged Teresia to turn to Erwin for answers. The racist was annoyed by the foul mouth of the beginner, and so tension immediately began to rise between the two sides while their common interest desperately tried to calm them down. A bag containing 5,000 stones was placed on the table for our hero. Teresia offered the barbarian the sum earned by the essence of her sister. This felt like it was straight out of a K-drama, where someone gives the protagonist a huge sum of money in exchange for cutting ties with the girl. Teresia was intrigued by the man not taking the money and became quite angry, as it seemed like the man wanted something else from Erwin. Bjorn turned to Erwin to ask about her opinion regarding this matter. After all, the deal was that she would help him collect a certain amount of it together in exchange for the essence. Erwin was shocked to see how fair the deal was, especially that the profits would be split equally between the two of them. At first, the eyes of the girl sparkled with joy, only to be saddened shortly afterwards. Despite the fact that the two of them were unbeatable together in the labyrinth, Erwin turned down Bjorn's offer. Teresia explained that from now on, her sister would hunt by her side. She revealed that she only allowed her to go in there alone according to the traditions, as this was her first raid. This made things harder for our hero, as Erwin already had allies of her own. With that, Bjorn was ordered to take the money in silence. But seeing how he was only given 350,000 stones, that means that he was still lacking the 280,000 stones that he earned from their previous deal. Teresia smirked, claiming that she had forgotten this small detail. But as soon as she pulled out the pouch that she was hiding, our hero realized that the racist was trying to scam him. Now, upon finally understanding why his race despised the elves so much, he urged the older sister to let him have a private conversation with the young one. At first, Teresia wanted to refuse, but upon seeing how her sister wanted to bid farewell to her labyrinth companion, she realized that her little sister wasn't so little anymore. Yet before leaving, Teresia wanted the barbarian to swear an oath. She wanted to make sure that he wouldn't try to sleep with her sister. And while Erwin was flustered by this, Bjorn couldn't care less, as sleeping was one of the few things they could do together. And thus, our hero accepted to swear. But little did the elf know the warrior honor that our guy had sworn on was something that he didn't care about. With that, the elder sister decided to make her leave. Yet she seemed to still have something to say. In the end, the racist expressed gratitude towards the barbarian for saving her sister. As soon as Teresia left, Erwin collapsed on the table. It was the first time that Erwin stood up to her elder sister, which is why she was worried that she would be mad at her. So Bjorn cheered her up by explaining that it wasn't the case. Erwin then apologized for turning down Bjorn as her teammate, as she had chosen to go with her sister a long time ago. This apology wasn't necessary, as in the end, Bjorn would have also accepted a high-level adventurer's help without thinking twice about it. Erwin then handed him his share of the money she had looted from the redhead and the enemy archer. Erwin, who had an amazing synergy with our hero, then answered all of his unasked questions by explaining that the backpacks of both enemies were at her house and that Bjorn was free to take his share of the items tomorrow. The elf then began to wonder about a way to pay the barbarian back, just like she promised. This explains why Teresia forced Bjorn to swear such an odd oath, as she was trying to protect her sister from any odd requests. But Bjorn began to think about it. Nothing came to his mind, so he decided to ask the girl if she would join him for dinner. But seeing how Erwin wasn't hungry, our hero decided to dine by himself. Yet after giving it a small thought, the girl excitedly shared her desire to order ale, as she had forbidden herself from drinking yesterday. The elf wanted to share her first return drink, which was some kind of tradition in the game, with our baboon. Erwin then explained that he should be grateful for the opportunity. After all, sharing the first return drink was the least they could do, seeing how they stood side by side in the labyrinth. Erwin then explained that this wouldn't be the first time Bjorn enjoyed a return drink, so he affirmed that it would be his first as well. The girl was shocked to learn that the primate didn't lie about his age, and that he was truly 20 years old. Bjorn clarified that he too was taking his first trip in the labyrinth. Shortly after, the food was served. The duo praised each other on their performance back at the labyrinth, and so they banged cups. After finishing their dinner, the elf, who was wearing a skirt, pointed out how the protagonist was finally covering his chest. Bjorn then chugged one last gulp before deciding that it was now time to talk business. He explained that he finally figured out a way for her to pay him back. The tipsy elf began to wonder about it. Bjorn then stated that they needed to talk somewhere more private. Erwin's heart began to pound like crazy, and thus she suggested taking this back to his room. Once in the room, Erwin was asked to spread them. Yet after much effort, to no one's shock, and to literally everyone's utter disappointment, our heroes were getting the wrong type of physical. The girl in pain explained that she can't bend like that. She then swore this on her family name. With that, as the girl was happy that her arm wasn't ripped off, the hero realized that her incredible flexibility wasn't visible outside of combat. The disappointed Erwin asked him if checking stats was their only plan for tonight. The blind man, who wanted to see if the essence in real life was different from the game's, explained that the use of powers was forbidden in public. This game was far from being friendly to the user, starting with the stats. Mind, body, and skill are supposedly the only 3 stats in the game unless one presses the little plus button on the side that reveals countless others. A good example would be stamina, which upon upgrading, would allow the player to carry heavier objects and better his attacks. For that reason, 2 warriors who have the body stats at 50 would have totally different capabilities. The funny thing is that even after grinding the game for 9 years, there were so many stats that to this day, Bjorn had no idea about the use of most of them. One of these weird stats was the one known as obsession, that came with the essence that the girl consumed. Thus, he asked her if anything had changed after returning from the labyrinth. Erwin revealed that she had gained a sudden love for cookies. This made Bjorn realize that the stat obsession affects desire. This made our baboon realize that he should take these new unknown stats seriously. At that moment, the elf claimed that she wanted to go to bed, and despite wanting to experience a little more, he accepted. Later on that night, while in bed, our hero recalled something. He remembered his oath regarding him not sleeping with Erwin. Even so, he quickly brushed it off, as the promise applied to the inside and not the beside of the elf. The next day, our heroes had gathered their loot. Erwin returned to her place early in the morning in order to fetch the items that would all be sold, except for a selected few. The elf was allowed to keep the leather suit as well as the belt as a part of her share. The sword went for 35,000 stones. Another item was sold of 18,000. As for the backpack, the man bought it for 25,000 stones. In the end, the sold items amounted to 45,000 stones. It was the first time that the gamer had acquired so much money in the game, as he only had to give Erwin 5,000 stones as her share. Bjorn was left quite pleased. Now came the time to bid the elf farewell, but to his shock she seemed disappointed. Thus, he agreed to walk with her to the central square, where their paths would split. Later on at the central square, something interesting seemed to be happening. Many people were gathered. The reason was an execution. Unlike some adults on Roblox, the crimes of these people weren't something horrifying. In fact, it was simply tax evasion. The execution immediately started. Rafdonia was the last remaining city that endured the curse of the witch, forcing it to only rely on the labyrinth to acquire resources. For that reason, those who failed to pay their taxes would be sentenced to death as a way to keep the population numbers under control. As soon as the head was chopped off, many humans with bread in their hands rushed to the guillotine. They then dipped their bread in blood and stuffed their faces with the bodily fluid. The reason these people were doing such a disgusting thing was a legend that claimed that the blood of the executed would provide great fortune. According to Irwin, the tax for non-humans in year 1 was 700 zalozen. This amount, although not the exact one, seemed like something that would be in the game. The similarities showed themselves even more confirmed as he learned that the year after, the taxes would be raised by 100,000 and that there were also exchange fees. In other words, taxes go higher with each year, which is why Bjorn needed to get stronger as fast as possible. Staying weak and not being able to exit the game would ultimately lead to his blood being used as a dipping sauce for those maniacs at the execution. Bjorn needed to save his money and become someone strong enough to survive the 6th floor in order to avoid the guillotine. Later on, our hero visited the library, which was still incomplete back in the game. Seeing how everyone was staring at him, he assumed that no barbarian had ever set foot in this place. But once again, our baboon was proven wrong. Bjorn was now reunited with the muscle mommy known as Anar. Intrigued by her presence here, our guy decided to wake up the beast. Einar finally woke up from her nap. In front of her was a Bjorn who claimed that he was glad that she had survived the dungeon. She began to shout that she was happy to see him as well. Bjorn urged the muscle mommy to keep her voice down, but these barbarians never understand. Einar recalled the advice given to her by the protagonist and explained that learning was the best way to sharpen her mind. Our guy realized that the girl must have undergone her fair share of trouble, as instead of bragging about her adventures in the raid, she claimed that after the labyrinth, she realized that monsters weren't the only threat. The only problem was that Einar had a hard time reading the books. For that reason, she considered going to the shrine in order to ask the elders to teach her how to read. Seeing how the skull crusher wanted to go there at once before forgetting her purpose, Bjorn realized that his stupid race lived a sad reality. The girl then recalled how she promised to pay back the protagonist for his help once outside of the labyrinth. And thus, she asked him to visit the Angry Bull Inn in case he seeks her help. Bjorn feared that Einar would forget her promise. As a matter of fact, her favor would be needed soon. Later on, Bjorn had a hard time finding the book that he wanted in this huge place. Only then did he spot someone behind the desk. He assumed that the sleeping lady was the librarian, and thus, he woke her up. The lady, who must be suffering from back pain, asked the barbarian about what he seeks. Bjorn revealed that he was here to look for history books. It didn't take the librarian long to chant the magic words. Our hero was shocked to see that she had cast a spell on him. Now, Bjorn would be able to find the book that he seeks just by roaming the library, yet he wasn't allowed to borrow any of them. Shortly after, the lady went back to sleep. Such laziness made the hero question her nature. The effects of the spell quickly showed themselves as soon as the baboon began walking inside the library. The magic allows one to quickly find a book related to the keyword that is on their mind. This explains why such a large place only had one librarian. The first book that Bjorn started to read was Fallen World, which tells of how the cursing witch made this land unable to live in. Rafdonia, the last city standing, was the only one to survive the apocalypse due to the royal family opening interdimensional portals that became the labyrinth. The story of this book was quite similar to the lore of the original game. The second book that our hero decided to memorize, as he couldn't understand it, was titled Alchemy's Basics Annotated 4, which tells of how magic crystals can be turned into food or resources. The third book explained the roots of the conflict between the elves and the barbarians, but the next one seemed interesting. The book known as Evil Spirits of the Abyss tells of mischievous souls from other dimensions that invade the bodies of this world's inhabitants. The working process of these evil spirits wasn't mentioned in this book, which made it obvious that the crown and the temple were trying to exterminate this problem. This means that the gamer who was now inside an innocent barbarian would go unpunished as long as he kept his secret to himself. Book number 5 was titled On the Death of the King, which tells of the demise of Loegen III, the immortal king who first ruled this land 150 years ago. Seeing how the events of the game take place right after the death of the king, it was now clear that Bjorn was teleported to a time different from the one in the game, which explains the oddities he encountered. The sixth book, which was about the dimensional anomalies, seemed to be the one that the Blondie Knight read. It turned out that the event that Bjorn suffered was truly a rare one, just like his savior said. The book also says that entering a portal right as it closes could result in an anomaly. To put it simply, Bjorn triggered his bad luck by his own hand. The day had already passed, and Bjorn decided to resume his reading session another time. This was his third day here after the events of the second floor. Since each month in this game was 30 days with the labyrinth opening on the first day of each one, there were still 27 days until the portal reopened. Our hero decided to start looking for allies the next day. As soon as morning dawned, someone began to bang at the door of Bjorn. The culprit was none other than Erwin. Bjorn rushed to open the door in order to see what the girl wanted so early in the morning, when suddenly a breeze of wind blew his face away, making him seem even more like an ape. Erwin happily declared that after 10 tries with the spirit stone given to her by her sister, she finally managed to seal the contract. This new spirit would work great with her fire, as it was wind. Bjorn stated that the girl must be fortunate. Spirit stones were greatly expensive items that gave the user a 10% chance of securing a spirit contract, and since the girl got to try 10 of them, it must mean that she was filthy rich. Erwin was shocked to see Bjorn asking her to cancel the summons when she hadn't even finished the demonstration. Little did she know that the winds of her spirit had been wreaking havoc in the room all along. Upon seeing this, Erwin apologized and rushed to clean up her mess. And just like that, the summons was canceled. Erwin cleaned up the room at an astonishing speed. She was then congratulated on getting a new spirit, but Bjorn then explained to her that she should be preparing herself for the next time she enters the labyrinth instead of coming here to show him her prowess. Erwin revealed that she just wanted Bjorn to be the first to know about her new contract. This made our clueless guy think that the elf must feel some kind of connection to him, as he was her first partner, and that this kind of relationship is better kept at the business level. Our hero's business side took over as he planned on staying friends with the girl. He explained that this room was now his permanent home, and that she was free to visit him anytime, leaving tears in her eyes. The main goal of our stupid hero here was networking. 26 days were left until the portal opens again, and Bjorn, who went to the Angry Bull Inn where the barbarians were staying, had a good idea on how to spend them wisely. As soon as Bjorn was spotted, his eardrums were pierced by the other loud primates. The barbarians assumed that the only one with a shirt here wanted to stay with them at the inn, as it was only 300 stones per night. Yet the only reason the room was cheap was because the many sweaty and hairless apes stuffed themselves inside the room like sardines in a can. Bjorn revealed that he was here to see Einar, whom he had forgotten was the daughter of God knows who. And just then they happened to stumble upon her in the hallway. Einar was intrigued by Bjorn coming to seek her. Our hero was here to use the favor that she owes him for a sparring match. Being the nerd of the bunch, any barbarian could solo Bjorn in a duel, but what he was asking for didn't need a favor. In case he ever wanted to spar, Bjorn simply had to throw himself on the field. The muscle mommy explained that she would gladly take him on any time of the day, except for morning. And thus, as the two of them decided to start right away, a crowd gathered around them to spectate the fight. Despite knowing that this was a lesson, Bjorn decided to fight with all of his might. Einar braced herself and hit him with her great sword. Shortly after, the muscle mommy, who was dubbed the new best warrior, was able to easily dominate the lucky Bjorn. Seeing how powerful the lady was, our guy realized that training with her was the best choice. And thus, he asked for another match. The Skull Crusher dominated the hero once again in the second match. In the third, she absolutely destroyed him. No matter how hard he tried, and even with his protection, Bjorn was nowhere near the league of the muscle mommy. The two of them kept on fighting until the night arrived. The powerful Einar was tired and desired to rest. Bjorn agreed to call it a day and began to consider how the lady was loyal like the rest of the barbarians, but smarter than most of their kind. As it turns out, Einar didn't have the funds to create her own adventurers' party. Seeing this, Bjorn decided to seize the opportunity and invited her to join his. As he explained that, as the part leader, he would get the biggest share but be responsible for the party fees, Einar stated that she had heard enough. Fearing that she wasn't satisfied with this offer, Bjorn began to panic and began to throw some cool terms for her in order to seal the deal. But suddenly, his hand was shaken. The girl wasn't smart enough to understand the terms of Bjorn, but had enough faith in her comrade to follow him. And just like that, the gamer secured himself a fetish as the first member of his party. The next day, the two of them went to the shrine of the barbarians. The mini-skirt in charge, who was the main reason Bjorn wanted to stay away from this place, welcomed the two young barbarians. The chief then asked the protagonist if he was here to learn how to read just like his friend. In fact, Bjorn was here for a different reason. Our hero was here to acquire the undead seal, which was an insanely strong skill that would be crucial in order to dominate the labyrinth.